was part of a protest during the emergency.
When the Congress got split into ruling and opposition, and the opposition leaders were put into jail during the emergency, but the opposition was not ready to be shut down. They were not protesting against them being jailed, but they were trying to figure out what's the solution outside of that. My mother, his brother, and his sister-in-law on a flight from Bangalore to Bombay, Bombay to Karachi, Karachi to the US. Pan Am flight. The flight got hijacked. Now there's a movie made about it called Nrityagram. Just when Mr. Hegde was taking power, a lot of engineering colleges were given licenses. They had the highest number of computer science departments only because it was the easiest department to set up.
Naveen, this is the centenary year of Mr. Ramakrishna Hegde.
Yeah.
Right? What's happening? And why are we celebrating it?
We are trying to celebrate the life and legacy of a person who had visions and dreams way before they became vogue and became spoken about. Again, he played it very low profile in terms of what he wanted to get done. He didn't project himself. And now we feel like people are not fully aware of all the things that he had done.
Right.
And there's a very large group of either family or friends or people who have been impacted who feel like we should do something more to carry forward the legacy. And in these past few years, in the birthday celebrations, most of the focus was on speeches by politicians. And this time we want to do a little bit more than that.
Okay.
We want to take it to the next generation and see how the next generation can connect with somebody whom they may not clearly know, but if we expose the value systems, organizations that he built, etc., then people can take pride in a son of the soil and say, man, there was somebody like this who lived amongst us.
What for you would be a successful outcome of that?
Where people say, number one, now we know that this existed. Then number two is we can see how those values and principles are relevant today. And number three is how can we take these values and inculcate that among ourselves and our kids. And some of these principles, I think, are timeless. Getting new people into governance and politics, younger generation. I think it's as valid today as it was 30 years ago.
I think it's going to be valid at every point of time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But today, if you ask somebody, hey, how do I get into politics? If you are not the son of, niece of, nephew of somebody who's already in politics, they have no clue.
The way it's run now, or the way politics or even contesting anything happens right now, requires you to have a lot of money, which is unfortunately the reality today. So not only is there the absence of the knowledge of how do you do it, but there is also the knowledge that to do it, I need a lot of money.
I think your statement is completely valid, but a few steps later, meaning you need the money to fight elections and things like that.
Right.
But to get to that stage, there are a few more grassroots things that have to be accomplished.
Like?
First, you got to know what standing and doing grassroots work in a constituency actually means.
Right.
Knowing that you are a servant of the people, not in, quote unquote, but actually being there to serve. Where people start at the grassroots and they learn how to govern, they learn how to serve, they learn the values of the constitution of the country. I will challenge most people in politics in India do not know the constitution of the country today. To represent people, you got to know what the country stands for, you got to know what your people want, and you got to be able to represent them. See, these are basic things that we need to have before we contest an election.
So let's say, like you said, a successful outcome from talking about the life of Mr. Hegde and the thing that and everything that he did would be to see more people, the younger generation, understand that value system and say, okay, how can I now apply this, right? Now, the CJP protests happened recently. Abhishek Dipke was asked, are you going to become a politician? He said, what's the point of becoming a politician? Because the moment I become a politician, then there will be ED raids on me. I will be put in jail. and I will not be able to do any work. I would rather be a pressure group.
If you have a burning desire to change, you have to start somewhere. You could start as in the form of protests, legitimate way, and that's an easy way to get press coverage and a bunch of other things. But if you have a desire to change, you got to have the ability not just to protest, but to build. Complaining is easy.
Yeah.
Protesting is easy because I don't like this particular thing. I'm going to go and march against it. But what is my solution to that? The value of democracy has been lost a little bit in that people don't even care to vote. I mean, I can give you examples of countries like Singapore, for example. If you would miss a vote, you cannot vote again for the rest of your life. So what the country is saying is, we have worked so hard to give you that right.
Right.
If you chose to ignore it, then you don't deserve it. I think it's one of the most sacred values that we should treasure. We don't. Why?
Mr. Hegde was part of a protest during the emergency. What was that like? Because I think when we spoke, you said that you actually saw some khufia meetings and all of that happening.
Yeah. I mean, they were not allowed to talk. I don't know how much of the history there is. Maybe I'll just give you a little bit. When the Congress got split, or Congress was split into ruling and opposition, and the opposition leaders were put into jail during the emergency, and they wanted to shut down the opposition.
Right.
But the opposition was not willing to be shut down. They were not protesting against them being jailed, but they were trying to figure out what's the solution outside of that. And that's when all of these meetings would happen in the jails under constant police watch, because people were not allowed to speak and there were secret notes being handed out and stuff. But they were building the future of the country outside of Congress. After that was the first time a non-Congress government came into power in the country. That was the Janata Party. That is an example of democracy at its best.
How was Mr. Hegde at the center of this, or how was he a part of this?
So the jail leaders were in two camps.
Okay.
One was in Tihar jail.
Right.
So we had, I believe, Charan Singh, Jagjeevan Ram, Atal Bihari Vajpayee, and a few others in Tihar jail. And out here we had Madhu Dandavate, we had George Fernandez, we had Ramakrishna Hegde, we had L.K. Advani. These people were at the heart in Bangalore of creating an alternative solution.
Okay.
But they knew they couldn't do it without the other group. And the group over there were trying to do the same thing, but they needed the cooperation of the people here.
And this is a time when there were no mobile phones.
No mobile phones. This was all...
Communication was slow.
Very slow, monkey mail.
Yeah.
Right? And I was only 12 years old then. For me, this was a spy thriller.
Right.
Because I could see little pieces of paper being handed out and chits, and we were carrying them out and we were shipping them and they were bringing it out. And I had no concept of a democracy and a party or anything. But for me, this was like, holy shit, something's happening. This is pretty cool.
Right.
And then we saw through a period of almost 12 months that random conversations were starting to coalesce into a national movement, but all from the jails. And this is also very similar to what happened with Nelson Mandela when he was in Robben Island.
Right.
So to me, looking at all of this is like, these people are making something happen. I don't know what it is, but I think it's pretty cool.
Right.
It's only later we realized that the whole new party was being formed, and they stood for elections, overthrew the government. And I think the then Prime Minister realized that, okay, putting the whole country under curfew or emergency rule backfired for her, because the people were not willing to stay quiet.
You also had a part to play in the notes and all of that, or you just...
I was just watching. I mean, I was too small to...
You were not one of those go to jail and hand over notes secretly to people and...
No, we were all in one room together. So the setup was that once a week we were allowed to go and take food for these folks.
Okay.
So my aunt, Ramakrishna Hegde's wife, would cook for everybody because all the others were from out of town. He was the only one here, and she would cook for the whole group. And we would all be in one room together, and they would all eat. And the police would watch from the outside. And then we would kind of I watched them, and they would have plates in front of them while they had pieces of paper next to them, and they would all be making notes, and then they would kind of get folded. And then we would take it back in our little bags. And then the next time when the bags came, they would get checked. Oh, yeah, these are tiffin bags, so it's okay. Bring them in. And for me, it was like, oh, we smuggled one more in.
Yes.
So that was my excitement, but as a 12-year-old. But then I later realized that this was a pivotal moment in India's history.
Right. Mr. Ramakrishna Hegde had a lot to do with where Bangalore is today. For you, what was his standout contribution? Was it arts, culture, sports, tech?
It was a combination of things.
Okay, so let's start with sport.
He was an avid golfer.
Okay.
He had this idea that we should have golf courses in Bangalore. And there's a connection to Singapore. When he had gone to Singapore once, as you approach the airport, one of the first things you see as you come down is one of the most beautiful courses called Tanamera course.
Okay.
At one time, he had mentioned, listen, I think if we can have a course where when people land into Bangalore, you can see the beauty of a nice golf course, that would be so spectacular. It was just a conversation then. Soon after that, I think 150 acres or whatever for KGA was allocated. He had a very well-defined target by SAARC, 1986 SAARC meeting. We wanted to have the golf course open.
Yeah.
Another pivotal moment, which is in the technology sector. He played an instrumental part at a key portion in time. And I'll tell you where the tricky, the interesting part is as well. Bangalore was known for a technical base. BEL was here, ISRO was here, Indian Institute of Science was here, and all of that was already here.
Yeah.
So there was a base of technical people here.
Yeah.
Kionics was formed 1970, early 1970, Karnataka Electronics Association, etc. And then R.K. Baliga, who was the president of Kionics, started Electronic City. Soon after that, Texas Instruments, so that was one of the first multinational companies that chose to come here.
Yeah.
Another thing that was happening in parallel was during the time of Devaraja Arasu and then Gundu Rao, a lot of engineering colleges were given licenses.
Right.
All these colleges that were given licenses were given engineering licenses. This was in the 81, 82, 83 period, just when Mr. Hegde was taking power, and he was forcing that you've got licenses, now you've got to do something about it.
Right.
What is the easiest department to set up? Computer science. Because all you need is a building and a few computers, and you can start a department. The highest number of engineering colleges were in Karnataka, around Bangalore, and then they had the highest number of computer science departments only because it was the easiest department to set up.
Damn.
Many people don't know this.
Yeah.
This is a carefully hidden secret.
So we've done sport, we've done tech, engineering tech, arts. Before we get to the arts, a direct impact to the streets of Bangalore, which was the greenification of Bangalore with Neginal. Mr. Hegde had a large part to play in that as well.
Yeah. So that has to go back to his childhood.
Right.
He comes from the Malnad area.
Okay.
The entire family, we were all agriculturists. So he grew up in an environment which was essentially the rainforest area. Everything was always green. And he understood the value of the lungs of a city through the trees, but more importantly, just the value of greenery around you, how important it was. So anytime when we'd have conversations around, greenification and stuff, he said, I want to make Bangalore the garden city. And again, it's not all his. There are multiple people who played a role. Mr. What's his name?
From Miguel.
Yes. He was a key supporter of that initiative. But he used to say, every house has to have a tree. One mane, one mara. But these are lessons, I think, that he put into practice because he had the tools of government to do it.
He was able to think ahead, right? So with the engineering and the tech and the fact that multinationals would be coming to Bangalore, and then he, in some way, I think, envisioned that it would expand. and he said, we need a water source. Wasn't he also responsible for Cauvery water coming to Bangalore?
Yes. So at the early stages, when Bangalore was growing at a pace that was much faster than anybody intended it to be, you need two or three basics, right? One is transport infrastructure, one is a power infrastructure, and the third is the water infrastructure.
So power we already had.
Power we had, yeah. So then the question was, where are we going to get water from?
Yeah.
And if you go back to the history of Bangalore, the Maharajas had already set up all of the water bodies such that they would flow from place to place, but that had gotten destroyed.
Yeah.
So you needed an alternative water source. So that's when he started, assigning engineering groups. And if I'm not mistaken, there was one big study that was also done at the Indian Institute of Science to see how can we re-engineer the water supply for Bangalore from Cauvery through both system of canals and pipelines that will allow for a continuous supply for and that ran into its own set of problems there, because the more water you took, the downstream states would have problems with that as well. So there was a careful balance that was going on in terms of how much water could you take away versus how much water you had to give down and so on.
Right.
But again, these are things that require an enormous amount of foresight, far beyond my pay grade, at least.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's true because I was just speaking to someone else, and they were saying that let's look at the next 15 years and what does someone who's born today need in 15 years from now, and let's start building that now. And I think that kind of foresight is either lacking, or if you have it, you don't have the ability to execute it. And like you said, fortunately for Mr. Hegde, he had the foresight, and he also had the support system that allowed for that to happen. The big subject is the arts, because there's just many things that Mr. Hegde did for the culture and the arts infrastructure in the city. So let's start with Nrityagram.
Protima Bedi, she was an extremely good proponent of her dance. And when they talked about, what can we do for Bangalore? Small conversations started around, okay, maybe we can start a dance school here or a dance school there or something like that. And his comment was, if we want to do something, great things cannot be accomplished by small dreams. Let's think bigger. What are the things that you could do if you had more resources available, resources in terms of land, money, whatever else. And she laid out a program for Nrityagram. And then he said, okay, if this is what you can get done, let's go for it. So that was just one example. Chitrakala Parishath is another one. I was born right outside of Chitrakala Parishath near the Shivananda store area. And at that time, there was nothing there. There was Gandhi. There was a Gandhi Bhavan was there, and the rest of it was just open land.
Right.
And they said, okay, why don't we establish a place where artists from all over the state, and then eventually from all over the country, have a place that they can call their own and have educational programs allowed out there for people to show off their talent. And again, think big, not think small. I think at that time, too, political opposition to these ideas were relatively smaller.
Yeah.
Right? That made a big difference.
There was something given to M.F. Hussain as well, right?
Absolutely. So Mr. Hegde was a supporter of small artists and big artists. And M.F. Hussain at that time was a big name.
Yeah.
And he asked if, he would like to set up a base. I asked M.F. Hussain if you'd like to set up a base in Bangalore. And there was a fund allocated for artists.
They call the artist's quota.
Exactly.
Right.
So he assigned a plot of land in Koramangala. Yes.
Yeah.
And I think it was called Sankalana.
Yeah.
And Hussain did it up the way he wanted. There is a proverbial tree that grows right through the building, if you've not seen it. And he said, "You shall not touch that tree." And he used to keep a lot of his paintings out there. And I know that my uncle had gone there to visit with Mr. Hussain a couple of times. And of course, then he went on his self-imposed exile and things like that. And now it's a restaurant.
Yeah, it became a restaurant. I think Naresh Narasimhan also was the architecture of that particular space for MF Hussain. Yeah, and then it became Banjara Melting Pot.
Banjara Melting Pot,
Yeah.
right. It's an upscale restaurant now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think things like these have happened. ISKCON is another example.
What's the ISKCON story?
Madhu Pandit was the person who said, "Hey, listen, we would like to set up an ISKCON center in Bangalore. And is there something you could do to help us out?" And in Rajaji Nagar, there was a quarry,
Okay.
empty quarry. It looked like a piece of land that nobody wanted. And they said, "Hey, can you make something happen out of this?" And he said, "Yeah, of course we can try. Give it a shot." And lo and behold, over a few years, now that's become one of the most visited ISKCON. I mean, the ISKCON Center, the building, etc. It's so spectacular. And he made sure, Mr. Hegde made sure that whatever Madhu wanted, it was not just, okay, go get it done. He would actively get involved, clear up all the obstacles, government obstacles, etc. And as part of that also, Akshaya Patra was born.
Right.
Akshaya Patra, I think, is the single largest child meal provision system or whatever in India. And that came out of this whole initiative. But again, there's another example of don't think small. If you want to do it, find the best place, find the best people, think big, dream big, make it happen.
If you were to encapsulate Mr. Hegde in a sentence or in a line, how would you talk about him?
Educated, articulate, suave, and somebody who connected with people in a way that they felt they were the most important person in the room.
When you say suave, there's also the image of him with his, trim beard and the cap. And I believe he liked to make his own cocktails as well.
Yes, yes, yes. Being a mixologist, that long ago he had a bar and he had the whole, mixology, the little cups with the strainers and everything else. And we would sit there mesmerized by this man who could kind of put this and a little bit of that and shake this and then dig in it back up in his head and then pour you something. So each of these things he had absorbed from somewhere. He could talk about whiskey when whiskey was not a thing. Single malt was not even known at that time. We also knew him to be a person from the same village that our parents or grandparents had all come from. But to be able to span that spectrum of conversation, of sophistication, yet not losing his rural upbringing and childhood, and being able to talk about fertilizers and coconut trees and arecanut trees the same breath that he would talk about the finest wines and whiskeys. So that's where I think the suave comes in.
What were the perks of being part of the family?
You threw it off by saying family. I think there were a lot of perks in being in his orbit. The number one thing that, at least a privilege that I got, was seeing a library in a home. I had never seen a home with a dedicated library. Encyclopedia Britannica was something that I had seen in some movies. And here it was, the entire encyclopedia, all the volumes were there, right? Listening to, Frank Sinatra and Tom Jones and Neil Diamond in the same breath that he would talk about Bhimsen Joshi and others. That was another privilege of being in that orbit. We learned some of those things, imbibed some of those things knowingly. Some of them without knowledge. I keep telling, my cousins, his own daughters and stuff, you will not believe the number of things that I've learned and followed and done without realizing it. And now when I look back at the pictures, look back at the stories, like, holy shit, this is amazing. So yes, there are a lot of perks of being in his orbit.
Privileges?
I don't think we utilized a single privilege, and we're very proud to say that. We, as in, I think his children did the same. My mother, being his sister, did the same. We never, ever utilized any privilege. And we are very proud to say that.
In your experience with him, do you think, a time where he could have used his powers uh, in the place that he was and he didn't use it for family or for personal gain?
There are several, but there is one which is very close to my heart and family, which I'll describe. And that was in the press and world press and so on. This was my mother, his brother, and his sister-in-law, Ganesh Hegde and Lakshmi Hegde, and another couple that were traveling to the US in the year 1987, 86, I think, on a flight from Bangalore to Bombay, Bombay to Karachi, Karachi to the US, Pan Am flight. And now there's a movie made about it called Nirja. And
Right.
my mother, my uncle, and aunt were on that flight.
What?
And the flight got hijacked. It was in Karachi. And we were all here in Bangalore, knowing that the flight had taken off from Bombay. And a little later, we heard that there had been a hijack in Karachi.
When you say you heard, how did you hear? From news?
Yeah, through the news.
Through the news.
At that time, there were no mobile phones. There was nothing. I mean, we actually sat in Deccan Herald's office looking at the teleprinter, going tit, and we were literally looking line by line. But we heard that it had gotten hijacked. In the pilots heard from the stewardesses that hijackers had come on board, and they informed the pilots. The pilots jumped off the plane. Okay, so that was a cause of a lot of debate whether they should have or not. The hijackers got into the plane when it was in Karachi on the ground.
Okay.
Only the stewardesses and the passengers were there with the hijackers. 16 hours of terror, probably around 140 people dead towards the end. Grenades burst. And basically what they did was they took people from the first class section and the back, packed them all into the center so that they could monitor everybody. So all the first class people in the back were all in the aisles on the ground, on both the aisles. And everybody was down this way for 16 hours, including my parents. And then the commandos started threatening to come in, but they had hostages, or 400 hostages or so they couldn't. And then at the end of 16 hours, the plane started running out of fuel. So the air conditioning systems went down. After the air conditioning systems went down, the hijackers then thought that they would be controlled from the outside. They said, if you do this again, we will start killing people. Power went off. And as soon as that happened, they started firing into the aisles and threw grenades into the people and into the aisles. A lot of people died. And finally the hijackers were killed, and in the confusion, people were trying to get out, and nobody had passports, nothing. They were either drenched in blood, lost a limb, lost a life. And my mother and my uncle and aunt, fortunately, one had some bullet shrapnel, and the other couple, one died in the plane, the other one died on the way to the airport. But these people made it all right. To answer your question on what happened, whether privileges could have been used, at that time, my uncle could have used whatever powers of the office to ensure that they were rescued over everybody else. Because when people got out of the airplane or jumped out, some jumped from the wing of the plane, which is almost 30 feet, broke their legs. Everybody was sent to, I think, about 9 different hospitals in Karachi, and nobody had any papers. So tracking who was a passenger, who was a survivor, who was not, was incredibly hard. And at that time, somebody who had the power could have, intervened and airlifted or whatever the few people that mattered to them and brought them to safety. But none of that happened. We were all sitting literally in the Deccan Herald Indian Express offices, waiting to see the list of passengers who were dead, because that was a smaller list than the people who were alive. And just trying to make sure that our parents or our uncle, aunt was not on the list of people who were dead.
How did your mother deal with that trauma?
20, 24, 25 years of PTSD, sorry. She would break out into sweat, and she couldn't see Nirja with me because it was too close to what had happened. But then the very next year, after the hijack, they got on a plane and came to the US. I had gone to the US and they came on a plane.
So she survived that flight?
She survived that flight. So, and with my uncle and aunt, so all 3 of them came. They said, we're not going to get cowed down by this. It happened. We survived, and we're going to move on.
Okay, so you may not have deliberately used a privilege, but what doors opened for you because you were part of the family?
Again, I would say with extreme pride that we did not open a single door with the name. There are people who just found out like 3 weeks ago that I'm involved in the Centenary celebration of Mr. Hegde, and they're like, why are you involved in that? I said, because he happens to be my mother's brother, and for 50 years, they've never known it. I'll give you another interesting story.
We love interesting stories.
I was in REC Surathkal.
Okay.
I was an engineering student there. And
I applied and I wrote the test and didn't get through.
Yeah, and I didn't use any privilege to get in either.
Okay, I can see how that sounded now in my head.
So, no privilege is used. For the longest time, 4 years of college, until my 3rd year, 1985, I think, he was still a chief minister, and he decided to come in the Bangalore area. And he said, I'm seeing you. And I have no idea. I'm just an engineering kid. Nobody in my college, including the whatever principal, the dean, not a single soul knew that his nephew was in the college. And all of a sudden, we were sitting in the hostel, and the whole entourage of cars with the lights and everything showed up. And they said, Naveen, they're looking for you. Like, who's looking for me? I said, there's police cars. I thought I was being arrested or something. But he had just come to say hello, and he came to pick me up. And he sat in his car, and we drove away to some traveler's bungalow or whatever they have for. I spent the night with him and came back. And I came back to like complete chaos in the college, because they were like, who was that? That looked like Mr. Ramakrishna Hegde. I said, yeah. How do you know him? So I think we as a family tried very hard never to play that card. And we are proud of it, extremely proud of it. We should learn never to misuse privileges that are given to us by the people. If we have earned the money, if we have earned it through whatever the right means, etc., then you have certain other privileges that money can buy. but it should not be misuse of power that the people have given you. And when we talk about power given to you by the people, it is a mandate. And if you lose that mandate, you should be willing to step down. And that's what he showed twice. He said, I don't have the power. I don't have the mandate. I will step down.
Right.
And then the people give it back, which is a different story, right? But the gumption, the guts, the integrity to be able to do that, not once but twice, to a point where people were ridiculing it. They're like, "Oh, he's making it into a fashion statement of just stepping down." But for a person in power to just voluntarily step down and say, "I've lost the power given to me by the people," I think it's an extremely rare thing nowadays.
It is. And also, I think just to add to that, all of that comes with a certain value of truth, right? And he also, during his time, set up the Lokayukta, which I thought was like, why would any politician do something like that? Where you say that, yes, come and investigate me.
I would ask the exact opposite question. Why wouldn't every politician be willing to stand through that test?
Because they'll fail the test.
Exactly. So, that's where value-based politics come into play. I think that's where the youth of the country should learn. That's the place for them to shine and bring a new breed of politics back again.
He also played a really important part in decentralization of power. Do you have any insight into that? Where did that come from? What was he thinking?
Yes. So the decentralization of power in his mind was started with the idea that why should all power rest in Bangalore? Real decisions need to happen much lower down the line, and people need to be empowered to be able to make decisions, whether it's at the Gram Panchayat level, whether it's the Zilla Parishad level, and there's one more in between. Why can't we have power decentralized to that stage? So that was the start of the whole Panchayat Raj movement. That he said, listen, we want the panchayats to be more powerful, and instituted that in Karnataka. And then eventually, I think about 7 or 8 years later, it went to the national level and it's gotten deployed nationwide. But that movement to ensure that power does not exist in the corridors of the Vidhan Sauda, but they exist in the doorstep of the panchayats. I think it's an extremely important thing that he wanted to make sure that happened in all of Karnataka.
Have you ever seen him scared?
I think he was afraid of people who were not honest. He was very careful of them. Because he tended to trust people implicitly. And if they betrayed his trust, he was very cautious of them.
This is the centenary year of Mr. Ramakrishna Hegde. So what do you have planned? What's happening? You said we don't want only speeches. We want to do a little more. So what's the little more?
We have a wish list. We would like a program to run for the entire year. We started on July 29th. August 29th will be the main event, and then September, October, November, etc. on 29th of each month. We want to announce different things, lectures, awards, photo exhibitions, etc., that run through the year and inform people about the legacy and hopefully inspire people.
In how you've described him, he seemed, like you said, right? He was rooted in the space that he came from, in the place that he came from, but he was also a global citizen in that sense. I think many people said that about the Vodeyars as well, right? Who in some way were, or in a large way, were responsible for what Bangalore became and where it is right now. If he were alive today, what do you think he would like to fix?
I will answer the question in 3 concentric circles. One is closest. to Bangalore and the problems that Bangalore has. I think the unchecked urban growth and expansion of the city without any plan, I think, is one thing that he would have wanted to fix. I think if I expand that beyond Bangalore to, let's say, the state, I think he would have loved to see Karnataka being among the top most producers while being ecologically sensitive as a matter of pride of his state in the nation. And then if I expand that to the nation, I think he would be incredibly proud to see that now India is getting back on the global stage. It's the fourth largest GDP, I think, fourth or fifth, depending on which day you measure, having a voice on the global stage and being able to talk with Russia on one hand and the US on the other hand and China on the other hand as peers. I think he would be incredibly proud of that because history, as written by the rulers at that time, taught us that we were third-class citizens. We were a third-class country, and we were worthless without the other powers that had colonized us. And now to be out of that shadow, to be able to stand on our own feet and say, these are the terms under which we will operate, I think would have been great. So giving you a city, state, and nation-wide perspective.
Thank you so much. And happy centenary year to the family and to Ramakrishna Hegde. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Thank you for sharing some really personal stories. You watched some of these speeches in the Lok Sabha by an Atal Bihari Vajpayee in the 90s. There was a certain class to the way even people in the opposition interacted with each other. There was respect even for people in the opposition. Hoping that someday that will come back as well. Thank you for your time and thank you for coming.
Excellent. Thanks. Enjoyed being on the show.